In Your House is back for the first time since 1999. NXT Takeover In Your House is this weekend, and we're going to predict the matches now in the Squared Circle Psychobabble. 6 matches on this card, Ralph. Let's get right down to it. We'll start with the 6-women tag match here. It's Mia Yim teaming up with Shotzi Blackheart and Tegan Nox versus Candice LaRae, Dakota Kai, and Racquel Gonzalez. You know what? I think this match really could be separated into 2 matches, as Shotzi Blackheart and Tegan Nox have really been part of one storyline with Dakota Kai and Racquel Gonzalez. Candice LaRae and Mia Yim have been on a separate storyline, but they blurred the 2 storylines together. I do like that build-up, and I think the reason why it's 1 match and not 2 is because this is the future of the NXT women's division. We know that eventually Rhea Ripley, Io Shirai will get called up to the main roster. Next man up or next woman up, I think these 6 are going to be the candidates for this women's division in NXT. So what do you think of this first match here, the 6 women's tag match?
Yeah, I definitely agree. It's a little, I don't think it's a bad idea to put these 2 storylines and blend them together, especially considering, like you were pointing out, it's only a matter of time before Rhea Ripley and Io Shirai are called up to the main roster to be squandered and wasted away like the rest of the NXT call-ups.
Well, I don't know if they're going to be squandered away. Let's not assume that they're going to have bad runs. I mean, Rhea has a lot of potential. Io Shirai has a lot of potential. Even if they don't team her with like the Kabuki Warriors, I think there's at least some great matches that she could have on the main roster.
I agree. Yeah, and the main thing is could have a main roster, could have a good run on the main roster. I'm just saying, if the past is any indication of what is going to happen with some of the NXT call-ups, it's not very promising for them.
True.
But that being said, that's not because of their talent. That's more so because of the way things are booked once they go to the main roster. But anyway, I do agree with you. I think that the reason that they are trying to feature everybody in one match is because this is literally going to be the core of the future of the NXT women's division, which, you know, this kind of is going to show and prove that they still have a very deep bench. So going back about a year and a half ago, I think we were sitting here talking about how there wasn't many people left in the women's division in NXT. Triple H did a really good job of building up that whole division again, and I think we're going to see that now, and I think he's starting to do that to be ahead of the curve with this match. So I think not only is it an important match just to kind of dictate what the future of the women's division is going to hold, but obviously for storyline reasons and all of that. So as far as who I have winning this one, I do think the team of Candice, Dakota Kai, and Racquel Gonzalez are going to take the win here. I think that the heels probably need this win more than the face team in this one. I wouldn't be surprised if this is the match that opens the show. I actually predict that we'll actually see quite a few heel wins throughout the night. But
yeah, I agree.
We'll
this could be a very heel night for NXT TakeOver. I agree with you in this regard that it will be LaRae, Kai, and Gonzalez winning this match. Obviously, this is just the start of all their storylines, whatever you want to do with them. It seems like Tegan Nox could be starting a storyline with Candice LaRae out of this, or even Mia Yim. So we'll see how that progresses. And I think that storyline progresses better if we get the heels winning this match as opposed to the faces winning this match. Because there's so many opportunities for heels to win in this takeover, I wouldn't be surprised if the faces actually end up winning here with Mia Yim, Shotzi Blackheart, and Tegan Nox. And let me tell you something. I think if any of these 6 girls are going to really be showcased, I think it's going to be Shotzi Blackheart. I think she has the most potential out of these 6. Now, granted, all 6 have great potential and are going to make the women's division very good for the months and possibly years to come in NXT. But Blackheart has got the in-ring work. She's got the character. She's got the look. It's a unique look. So I'm excited to see her in this match. So I will say that it will be Kansas's team winning, but Shotzi Blackheart's going to be the one that shines most in this match. So, all right, let's move on to our next match here. It is a one-on-one match between Finn Balor and Damien Priest. Now, Finn Balor was attacked by Damien Priest prior to Balor's match that was supposed to be against Velveteen Dream on an episode of NXT. Now that sets up this storyline. Both of them probably need a big takeover win. So the question is, who needs it more? I know Finn Balor won against Gargano at Portland. Does he win again against Damian Priest as he just goes through the NXT roster and possibly goes after the NXT championship? Or does Damian Priest get the win because, you know what? He could use a big win because he hasn't really had a big win yet in NXT.
He could use a big win, but I think unfortunately for him, I think there's just too many guys that are still trying to get established and that can probably be in that top role and do it better than he can. He's very good. I like him a lot. He's very good in the ring. He's not a bad promo, and he's got a really good look, and he's got some size to him. The problem is they just got a guy under contract who is, by character standpoint, very similar to him in Killer Kross, I would say. As far as the dark, ominous look, the way they kind of present themselves, kind of portraying themselves as the badass of NXT. So I don't think that he's going to get the win here. I don't think he should get the win here. I think that if they were going to do more with him in the future, which they could do that, I just think there's too many guys that are ahead of him in line, and I don't know if his time is so much sooner as it is later in that respect. So I think further down the line, he'll get a big win over somebody who's more established, but I don't think now's the time. I don't think Finn Balor's the right guy for him to go over at this point. I think Finn Balor's a guy that they put him on the show NXT. I put him on the roster because he's a pretty big name. He's a well-established guy from the main roster that's really supposed to attract people to that show. Unfortunately for NXT, I think a lot of their momentum got halted with the whole pandemic and lack of crowd, and they couldn't really get back on their feet. But Finn Balor, it's not like he's hurt in any of that. Having him lose, though, I don't think that's the right call right here, only because I don't see them doing anything in the immediate future with Priest, because there's too many people ahead of him in line for those main top spots. So I see Finn Balor winning this easily. Yeah. Not easily, but in my opinion, it's an easy prediction for me.
I get what you're saying. With maybe Finn Balor would get the win. It's bigger for him than it is Damian Priest. But let's think about this. Finn Balor, since he's come back to NXT, has had some pretty big wins over guys like Matt Riddle, Johnny Gargano, some of the top guys in the NXT roster at the time. If Damian Priest gets this win, I would think would automatically catapult him to the NXT championship conversation. Whereas if Finn Balor wins, it's just another guy that's not exactly a top level NXT guy right now. Maybe was at one point, maybe will in the future. So I think it hinders Damian Priest more if he loses than it does help Finn Balor if he wins. So I actually think Damian Priest is going to get the win here, but I do question, like you, what happens next with Damian Priest. Obviously, it depends on who the NXT champion is, who the North American champion is. What title does he chase? He could obviously chase for one or both. So I say that it will be a Damian Priest victory here. Maybe some shadiness involved because, he's got that nightstick thing that he might use, behind the ref's back. So it won't be a clean win, but I'll say Damian Priest gets the win here.
And the only reason I suggest that he's not necessarily going to get the win and the push to the main event level like you're kind of suggesting is because I really see kind of three people off the top of my head that are really kind of ahead of him. So if you want to consider Kross, which I think he's definitely ahead of him right now, or at least somebody that they're going to try to push immediately to that main event type level.
Right.
You got him. You have Johnny Gargano with his recent heel turn, or they're trying to establish him as a heel, which he's been really good in this role, in my opinion. So I got to think that he's slightly ahead of him. And depending on what happens in the main event later on in the night, if Adam Cole does drop the title, I still think he's ahead of him. So that's three people that he's obviously ahead of. So I don't know. I understand where you're coming from. I could see it happening, but it's not so much the lack of talent, the lack of him not being able to play that role. I see too many people that are just ahead of him. So if he gets the win, what does he do with that momentum? I don't think there's anywhere really for him to go. So I think Finn Balor takes it.
Right. But the other thing, too, is there's all these rumors and speculations that there are going to be a lot of NXT guys getting called up. I know Dominik Dijakovic has been in the conversation. We already know Matt Riddle has been he's going to go to SmackDown. So are there other guys that we haven't heard yet going to the main roster? And if they go to the main roster, obviously that opens up a slot for Damian Priest. So only time will tell. You bring up Karrion Kross, Killer Kross, as a guy that's going to be a top-level talent in NXT. He's got a big match here against Tommaso Ciampa. Now, this one I think could steal the show. I think this could be the match of the night. Obviously, Karrion Kross's first real test in NXT. He's had a few squash matches since he's debuted. Tommaso Ciampa, was just going for the NXT Championship at TakeOver Portland. Had his match with Johnny Gargano, that big cinematic, no holds barred, what do they call it? Final heartbeat or whatever they called that match. And then carrying over here to the Karrion Kross feud. Do we see some kind of even better entrance for Karrion Kross than we already have, seeing that this is a takeover? It's kind of hard to already top it, but how can you evolve this entrance for a big show like a takeover when it's already like a takeover-esque entrance for Karrion Kross?
I don't know. I mean, there's certainly certain things I guess they could do, but they're probably going to be limited because of the whole social distancing thing that they have to abide to, and
True.
You can only have X amount of people in the building. I'm willing to bet he's probably going to have the best entrance of anybody tonight. Not only is he going to have the best entrance, he's going to get the win here.
Yes.
Ciampa's going to tilt the cap, do the deeds, put the guy over, and that's just going to go. That just goes to show you, like, unless Vince McMahon is going to watch this and just clamor to have this guy brought up to the main card immediately, which could be possible because he's got the look, he's got the size, and you know how Vince likes those things. And
he's got the blonde hair. He's got the blonde girl behind him that he loves too, in Scarlett Bordeaux. So everything's there.
They are the total package of NXT right now. I can't see him lose. This is really his first big high-profile match since debuting and getting a couple of big squash matches. Now, the question is, you suggest it's going to be the match of the night. I have a different pick for that. Is this going to be a decisive couple-minute squash over Ciampa? It could possibly be, kind of like the thing that happened with Brock Lesnar and Cena trying to establish Brock as this dominant figure, which he already was. But this is a guy who I think a majority of the NXT fan base probably knows, but there's still some people who don't know who Killer Kross is. So we shall see, but I think Kross takes this for sure.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see. I could totally see a one-sided dominance with, like, what was it, 14 German suplexes with Lesnar and Cena at that SummerSlam. I hope that's not the case because, you're talking about Tommaso Ciampa, who's had countless great takeover matches. So I hope that's not the case where it becomes a one-sided match. And, since this pandemic started, people have asked or complained about squash matches on these shows. Like, it's not entertaining. Why do we have them? And I keep saying this on social media platforms that you need those squash matches to establish a guy like Karrion Kross or like on AEW, Brody Lee, Wardlow, Lance Archer. Then they have that match where it's like pick on somebody your own size. This is Karrion Kross's pick somebody on your own size match in Tommaso Ciampa. Now, granted, Tommaso Ciampa is a much shorter guy than Karrion Kross, but to the aspect of level of NXT talent, that's what I mean by pick somebody your own size. And then when he wins that match, you can elevate him to the next level, which is either the North American title or the NXT Championship. So yeah, Karrion Kross is definitely winning. I think it's going to be a well-contested match. Like I said, match of the night. So another one that could be the match of the night, though, is for the North American Championship. Keith Lee versus Johnny Wrestling, Johnny Gargano. This whole heel turn that he's had, I'll admit, I did not like the video package with him and Candice LaRae at first with the black and white, and I thought it was very distracting going back and forth. It was executed not so great, but the character of Johnny Gargano now is very good, and Keith Lee is a guy that, could be the face of NXT. He's that over with the NXT crowd, was very over in the Survivor Series match where he was going toe-to-toe with Roman Reigns. So the question is, Is he going to drop the North America title and be one of those that gets elevated to the main roster? Or is he going to be one of those guys that has a good reign with the North American Championship and stay established as a top star in NXT?
Yeah, and that's probably the question that a lot of people are asking themselves, because if they do intend to call quite a few people up, which has kind of been the rumor, you got to think that this is another one of those guys that might get the opportunity to be called up. Reason I say that, he's got personality and he's got size,
Yes.
and it's either you've got one or you've got the other. And I think he's somebody that can certainly go to the main roster, can certainly be a big name and a big star for the future. Headline WrestleManias, all that type of stuff, just because he does have that type of personality. I think that they're going to hold off on doing something like that until fans come back, because somebody with a personality like he has, somebody who has that kind of infectious type of personality where it spreads out and people can kind of react to it. I think that serves best when there's actually fans there. So I don't think they need to rush this. I don't think he's going to lose. I think that he gets the win over Gargano and retains. Stays in NXT for a little bit.
I mean, it's just one of those weird things where like Gargano just had this heel turn, and to have him lose his first match with this heel turn, granted it's Keith Lee, and Keith Lee really needs a good championship run. So this one is probably the hardest to predict, yeah. I think.
Yep.
My way that my experience in watching WWE for such a long time makes me think that Gargano will win, but my gut is telling me Keith Lee is going to win. So this one's hard. I think this one is the hardest one. So I will actually predict that Gargano does dethrone Keith Lee. Now, does that mean he's going to the main roster? Maybe, maybe not. Does this set up a second match down the line? Possibly. We'll see how it goes. But I will actually say that Gargano, through heelish tactics, does win the North American Championship. So the second championship match on the card is the women's championship match. We got Charlotte Flair, who doesn't seem to take a day off. She's on Raw, she's on SmackDown, she's on NXT. She's the NXT Women's Champion in a triple threat match against Rhea Ripley and Io Shirai. Now, I know a lot of people don't like Charlotte Flair, especially because she literally is getting shoved down our throats, being on every single show of the week. Like, this is past anything Roman Reigns and John Cena push. But I think there's a reason behind this. One, obviously from a analytics perspective, I'm sure the segments that Charlotte Flair is on must have some kind of ratings boost, whatever show she's on. And because we see that the ratings continue to fall, Vince McMahon sees that once Charlotte's on, ratings go up for that segment. I'm not saying overall, but that segment. So she has her on all these shows. Second is she's a heel, and we got to find different ways to draw heat. And you can't really draw heat when there's no fans. The only thing you have is social interaction, social media interaction. And when social media is bombarding with the fact that Charlotte's on all these shows, Vince is seeing that as the heat that he needs for whoever dethrones her as the NXT Women's Champion. They can be the top babyface in the women's division. So that's how I see this from an analytical and from a weird wrestling booking perspective. With that said, Charlotte Flair's retaining against Rhea and Io Shirai.
So let's try and remember why we're in this situation to begin with, right? There was tension between Charlotte and Rhea Ripley. WrestleMania was supposed to be the moment where everybody assumed Rhea Ripley was going to get the win over the big bad Charlotte Flair and kind of cement herself as a top star, because she was going to go over the main event talent or the main card talent, and she's from NXT and establish the NXT title and all of that.
Yep.
Going into their match, there was certainly some rumors and some questions about both the health and the visa status of Rhea Ripley.
Yes.
We know she's back. We know she's healthy. And one would assume that her whole visa status, if there even was one, is all but cleared up. So,
correct.
Assuming that, and assuming that the only reason she dropped the title to Charlotte was for that reason, I actually think she's going to drop the title, Charlotte. I think
Mhm.
That, we talked about this when we talked about the match with Nyla Rose and Hikaru Shida. There's, to me, a reason why this is going to be a triple threat, because they know they can get an easy out on this. I think Io Shirai is going to take the title here. And the reason I say that is I think that they can continue to do what they've set out to do. They want to make sure that there's a feud going on between Rhea Ripley and Charlotte. I don't think you need the title as a part of that feud for it to feel important. At this point, I think Rhea Ripley, they could just tell the story that she wants to get her win back. Yes, of course, she wants the title, but to her, ultimately getting the revenge of the loss at WrestleMania to her is going to be more important. The other thing that you also have to consider is the fact that, like you mentioned, Charlotte, I think that what the intent was with her carrying the title was to help establish it, and to try and bring prestige to it, which she's awesome. She's one of the very best in the business. The problem is the fans don't see it that way. A lot of the fans feel like she's being shoved down everybody's throat, that it's being forced, that it's not organic, and that starts to hurt the individual. It happened with Roman Reigns. It happened with John Cena to a certain extent, and it's starting to happen with her now. As good as she is as a performer, as good as she is on the mic, as good as her presence is overall, it's starting to hurt her in respect that it's just too much. People don't want to see her, and they're starting to feel like she's just getting things handed to her because of her last name. I don't agree with that. I think that she's earned everything she's gotten, but that's just the way some fans feel. So I think that they're going to take the belt off of her, put it on Io Shirai because it's a triple threat. And don't forget, the important thing out of all of this is the big rumor is eventually they want her to break her father's championship wins. The only way that happens is if the belt is continuously taken off of her and then given back to her. So they'll work towards that. They'll continue the storyline. Rhea and Charlotte, they don't need the title for that. Io Shirai's walking away with the championship tonight.
Yeah, I mean, that makes a lot of sense, Ralph, but there's also the rumors that Io Shirai is going to be part of these call-ups. So I could see that Charlotte dropping the title, maybe to Rhea, and Io's actually in this match because she's the fall girl. She's the one that's going to take the pin from either Charlotte or Rhea, as this is going to be her last match in NXT before she gets called up to either Raw or SmackDown. But now that you explain it that way, I can actually see her staying in NXT because of, like I said before, with the 6 women tag, that's going to showcase the future of the women's division. Io Shirai, like, she's been there for a while, but has she really been showcased enough in the women's division where it's like, okay, she's done everything that she can do and she could go to the main roster? That's the question. So you can use her to win the title and go and showcase these 6 women that are in the first match that we discussed, and then she drops it and then gets moved up. So that's the other thing too. But I agree with you in the fact that Rhea and Charlotte definitely don't need the title to extend their feud. But if you have Io win the title, that means obviously Charlotte's no longer on NXT. Rhea would have to get called up. So the question is, what show is it on? Now, I'm pretty sure Charlotte was on Raw before this whole, like, I could do all 3 shows because I'm Charlotte Flair. So I think that Rhea would go to Raw, but do they have Rhea go to all 3 shows too? I don't know.
Who knows?
I hope not, because we don't need people on 3 shows when you have 3 huge ass rosters of at least 20 people. So
remember when it was a thing that you weren't allowed to do that? Didn't Paul Heyman come out and say that they weren't going to allow people? And I mean, this is
Paul Heyman also Paul Heyman was the guy that said that Brock Lesnar can just, jump from SmackDown to Raw too, without really explanation other than I'm Brock Lesnar. So
anyway, the last point I will make is when you talked about match of the night, this one is going to be the match of the night in my prediction.
It's possible. So, all right. Then we have our main event. It is a backlot brawl. Adam Cole, who now surpassed 1 year as NXT champion, will defend against the Velveteen Dream. Now, the Velveteen Dream has been at one point the most over wrestler in NXT, in my opinion. Adam Cole has been one of the most successful NXT wrestlers, not just because he's a long reigning champion, but he's had great matches. He was the first North American champion. The Undisputed Era, probably the top faction, one of the best factions in professional wrestling. what else is there left to do in NXT for him? Now, there's this rumor going around that his contract is up in August. That has seemed to be debunked, as there's other rumors going around that he signed a 3-year deal in the winter. So I'm not sure exactly what's confirmed and what's not. But we could make the assumption that this is Adam Cole's final match in NXT. However, Velveteen Dream is also part of these rumors that he's getting called up to the main roster. So again, this is a match I have no idea how to predict because of all these rumors and news that we're getting about these guys. So the question is, do you extend the long reign of Adam Cole until you find someone that's worthy enough to dethrone him, or is Velveteen Dream that guy? I say it is.
I agree. Yeah, take the speculation of the contracts and everything else out of it, right? So there's a couple of things we already know. We already know Adam Cole has pretty much accomplished everything that you can accomplish. He's probably, or at one time when you could have fans, he was probably one of the most over guys in all of NXT, maybe the most over guy in NXT history because of his catchphrase, the way that the fans were able to react and interact with his entrance. The group Undisputed Era, crazy over.
Mm-hmm.
So you've got that. All the championships you mentioned. Eventually he will get called up. If that time is now, I don't know. But a couple of things are important to point out here. So like I mentioned earlier, Killer Kross, Karrion Kross, whatever you want to call him, they didn't debut him and throw him right into a match with a guy like Ciampa, and I'm assuming he's going to win. He's, in my opinion, you can't lose your first big match on a pay-per-view or big night like this. So I think he wins. Obviously, he's a heel. Do they want to do the heel versus heel thing? I doubt it, but I think that you need to put the belt on a face, which Velveteen Dream, great wrestler, charismatic. I think they put the belt on him, and it's immediate heel face thing with him and Karrion Kross. I think that's where they're going to go. And then if Adam Cole gets called up, I don't know.
Now, here's the thing. Here's the other thing, too. As I mentioned before, when I was explaining the backstory of Finn Balor and Damien Priest, was that Finn Balor was having a match with Velveteen Dream that night before he got attacked. So obviously that seed is possibly planted that could be Velveteen Dream's first number one contender is Finn Balor, because let's not forget, Velveteen Dream was talking about the NXT Championship, which is why that match was set up to begin with. And Finn Balor did not like the comments that Velveteen Dream said. So do they continue that with Finn Balor winning and Velveteen Dream winning? Do they go that route? Now, Finn Balor doesn't necessarily need to win his match against Damien Priest to get there, because it's, like I said, there's already the backstory to it. Although we do like to have wins and losses matter. Like, their counterpart on Wednesday nights seem to try to portray that wins and losses matter. So I agree with you. It's going to be Velveteen Dream winning this. Here's the other question. There's this story that's being told the last few weeks about one Dexter Lumis. I love this character. This is my favorite character in NXT right now. He doesn't need to say a damn word, and I'm captivated by him. He reminds me of like the most sadistic murderers on an episode of Criminal Minds. He's just that cold death stare without blinking. He made like him drawing a picture on television captivating this week on NXT.
Yeah, I agree. He's very good. But here's the problem. They have so many of these guys that are trying to portray this darker, badass type character. You mentioned him. We didn't even talk about Thatcher, but he just came off a big win over Matt Riddle. Karrion Kross, Finn Balor to a certain extent, Priest. They're all very similar in the respect that it's like they're very dark, like dominant type characters.
Mm-hmm.
Or that's at least how the badass type characters, and they're all trying to portray that. So that I see that a little bit of a conflict. You can only have so many guys that are so similar. They're all kind of playing very similar parts.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I definitely see where you're going with that.
Yeah. And the thing too is like Dexter Lumis might be doing this thing with the Undisputed Era, like his feud with them, but he's also like he's been teaming with Velveteen Dream, and his character doesn't necessarily. He's not really a baby face. He's not really a heel because he's going after heels. He's a tweener, a natural tweener. Holy crap, we have tweeners again. But like the whole character of Dexter Lumis is just so good. Like in a world of professional wrestling today, where everyone's got to be over the top and outlandish and flippy floppy, all this stuff. You have Dexter Lumis, who is just so simple, where he doesn't even talk. It's like Sting. It's like Sting 97 all over again.
He's the R-rated version of Dean Douglas.
How do you figure that?
Well, Dean Douglas was supposed to portray a teacher with a whiteboard and all of that stuff. So he's the psychopath version of that.
Oh my God.
He's the bipolar yin to the yang of Dean Douglas, perhaps in some crazy psychotic world.
Well, I guess until Dexter Lumis starts scratching chalkboards, I hope that's not the path it goes to, where he ends up being Dean Douglas. But I'm just telling you, like the look, like everything's just so good. I think he does get involved in this match somehow. I do think he gets involved in the Backlot Brawl, whether he's just there staring at these guys, but he's going to be involved in this story. So I'm excited to see this match. Obviously, it's going to be a cinematic thing because they pre-taped it. And like, I don't think we're getting like Hollywood Backlot Brawl, but I believe there was like, what was it? Eddie Guerrero and maybe John Cena had something like this, if I remember correctly. I can't remember exactly who was in the match. I'm sure someone in the comment section can correct me on this, but that's probably the approach they go to, where like the cars are surrounding everybody and they have a match that way. But if Dexter Lumis is not involved in this, I'll be shocked, and he should be. But aside from Dexter Lumis, now's the time to finally pull the trigger on the Velveteen Dream. And it's just so amazing. The guy is only 24 years old, and he just gets it. And I've said that since the beginning with him. He just gets it. This is a star in the making. Actually, he's already a star, but like, this is a guy that I think in the main roster could be great. Adam Cole, he's done everything. He doesn't need the title anymore. I think this is the final night of the Undisputed Era in NXT. I say all four of them go up and possibly start a Nexus 2.0 storyline.
And do it the right way.
Do it the right way.
Yeah, I mean, have them go over the people they're supposed to go over. Yeah.
Right. All right. So let us know in the comments your predictions for NXT TakeOver. Don't forget to share this all over social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at STPV Podcast. And for news, reviews, and conversations on all things pro wrestling, subscribe. Hit that bell for notifications. For Ralph Valenti in his house, my name is Michael Valenti in my house. Thank you in your house for watching the Squared Circle Psychobabble.